As good lifted high on these ABCs. 1, 2, 3. Take a look inside. Everything you need is right in front of you. Right in front of you on these ABCs. Hi, my name is Lauren Jones, Amplafii Genius Brillionaires are you, the viewers. So thank you for watching with me and learning with me. So today we're going to do some men icons in the community from past. And soon we'll get to some of the icons of the present. But right now we're going to talk about Whitney Young Jr., born in 1921, passed in 1971. Whitney Young Jr. invoked the future at the 1963 March on Washington. These are Civil Rights Movement knowledge cards from the Library of Congress. Whitney Young Jr. invoked the future at the 1963 March on Washington. African Americans must, this is what he said, African Americans must march from the rat-infested, overcrowded ghettos to decent, unrestricted residential areas. They must march from the congested, ill-equipped schools. They must march from a present feeling of despair and hopelessness to renewed faith and confidence. Young's speech focused on the poverty, discrimination, and lack of opportunity that plagued African Americans throughout the United States and which would become the major civil rights issue as legal segregation ended in the South. Now think about that for a second. He spoke from his experience as executive director of the National Urban League, which had campaigned for equitable economic and social conditions for African Americans since 1911. So this was a very, very long time that we were fighting for these issues, and we still are. A leader of the March on Washington, Young advised Presidents John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson on civil rights issues. So we appreciate presidents that listens to Black leaders, Black thought, Black conditions, that pay attention to our conditions and seek to aid them. That is literally what we need from our leaders and what we demand of our leaders, as hard as it may be. So this is Whitney Young Jr., a organizer of the 1963 March on Washington. Okay, now let's continue. Arna Wendell Bontemps, born in 1902, passed in 1973. How old did that make him? You tell me. Okay. We were heralds, and how old was Whitney Young Jr.? He passed in 1971. He was born in 1921. Okay. So let's see. We were heralds of a dawning day, proclaimed Arna Bontemps in his 1972 anthology, The Harlem Renaissance Remembered. The Harlem Renaissance Remembered. He wrote an anthology. We were African-American writers, artists, and musicians whose creativity in the 1920s forever transformed the way Black culture was perceived in America. Bontemps took that same heady Harlem spirit and carved his own literary renaissance, which extended beyond New York City and lasted nearly half a century thereafter. He produced more than 25 books, novels depicting aspects of Black history and experience. God Sends Sunday, 1931. Black Thunder, 1936. Anthologies that celebrated Black culture, the poetry of the Negro, and the Book of Negro Folklore, edited with Langston Hughes, great slave narratives, poetry, history, and Black juvenilia. With consummate skill, dignity, and thoughtfulness, he became a keeper of the flame of African American heritage. That's Arna Wendell Bontemps. Okay? Let's go on. I really like this person. Claude McKay, born in 1889, passed in 1948. So that one might be a little harder, but how do you know how old he is? That's the answer for the quiz. Write that in the comments, someone. This is a little quiz. How old was he when he passed? One of the most prominent voices of the Harlem Renaissance poet. One of the most prominent voices of the Harlem Renaissance, the poet and novelist Claude McKay, wrote of the sweet experience of his early years in Jamaica, of life in Harlem, of his travels in Europe and the Soviet Union. But the core of his work was his rage at the injustice of racial prejudice. The white man is a tiger at my throat, drinking my blood as my life ebbs away, and muttering that his terrible striped coat is freedom's and portends the light of day. Wow. A tiger. That was from a poem or writing called Tiger. A gentleman of acute intellect, McKay held many jobs throughout his peripatetic life to support the literary work that was his true vocation. His dedication gained him respect and readers, both white and black. It also brought him honors. In 1912, he became the first Black Islander to receive the Medal of the Jamaican Institute of Arts and Sciences. 16 years later, his Home to Harlem became the first novel by a Black writer to reach the commercial bestseller list. It was reprinted 5 times in 2 months. 2 months reprinted 5 times. So that was a really, really, really prolific thing to do. It still is. It still is. All right, last one for the day. Jesse Owens, born in 1913, passed in 1980. So how old was he when he passed away? Okay. By virtue of the 4 gold medals he won at the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, Jesse Owens is remembered as one of the greatest track stars ever to compete in the Olympics. But Owens' triumphs had a resonance far beyond sports and have become the stuff of modern legend. Above all, for the stinging blow they delivered before the eyes of the world to the racial doctrines of Adolf Hitler. The Nazi regime had hoped to make the 1936 Games a showcase of white superiority. But Owens, who was working his way through Ohio State University, gave a stunning performance that demonstrated not only Black power, but the power of sport to transcend ideology and prejudice. Oh, so good. Believing that an African American who achieves success should think in terms of not only himself, but also how he can reach down and grab another Black child, pull him up to the top. Owens later became a celebrated public speaker and promoter of youth sports programs. And then you can see why. How can we reach down and pull up another child? That is what we are constantly doing. Black men, brown men. Jesse Owens, 1913, passed in 1980. I thank you for rocking with me on these ABCs. Take a look inside. Everything you need is right in front of you. Right in front of you on these ABCs. Thank you for learning with me. We'll see you next time, Amplify Genius Brillionaires.